So there's only around, 7 minutes left in the call. And I know that when we were introducing ourselves, some of you mentioned you had some questions that you directly like to ask a cybersecurity expert like Junaid Islam. So I'm going to pass it on to the floor to see if there's any questions that you guys have that we might be able to help you with. So I wrote everyone's name down when they were doing the introduction. So I'll just start at the top. Ben, do you have any questions? You work in esports, definitely an industry where there's secure credit card information, customer information, all of that. Do you have any questions for Junaid or XQ that we could help you with?
Yeah, so the biggest one for me is, how do I push a culture of security on my team? Obviously, security is like one of those things that, because it's treated like an outside aspect of the platform, like you're wrapping your application in a bubble and you're trying to make sure that nothing gets through that bubble. That's not really the best way to promote security. But then you also deal with a lot of devs who, that's not the first thing they think about because that culture just hasn't been pushed before.
That's a great question. And it kind of even goes back to what we were talking about, how software and security are almost siloed, and we want to integrate that all together, because I think then it does push a culture of, how much security is important. But I'll pass it over to Junaid, who really is the expert. Junaid, maybe you can talk about your time at Coca-Cola or some of the other projects you've worked on where they were able to do a top-down approach.
So you touched on something important, which is, and I'm going to paraphrase you a little bit and say, why bother? Why bother doing any of this? And I would say there's two reasons. And so we're testing this idea. So as Kelby mentioned, one of the ideas we want to refine with developers is your product worth more if it is secure? Right? And hopefully the answer is yes. Now, Ben, you said something a little important, which is, what if people just don't care, right? Which is tricky. So related to that is, what happens to our business if our product fails? So that's the opposite or other side of the coin, which is, okay, the good is, we're better. The flip side is, well, maybe we fail less. But I think what I get out of your statement is it's probably important for us as a group, and I use the word, we're the Zero Trust software developer community. This meeting is historic, that we probably have to get good at expressing the economics of integrating Zero Trust into applications for everybody in the community, right? So that even the downstream users say, hey, let's work with people in this group, right? We want this to be a win for everybody. So hopefully that answers your question, but it's more like work we need to do. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I mean, it's kind of an answer to my question. I mean it more like, because I'm in charge of the project and I recognize that nobody cares about security until a breach has already happened. How do you change that culture? How do you, and the thing about everything being on the cloud now, and the thing about everything being driven by APIs now, is that formerly really difficult topics that required a lot of math and research level understanding, like security, are available now for random developers who are at any skill level. So the question you're asking is, how do we build the right product? The question I'm asking is, I want desperately for everyone on my team to always be thinking about ways that they can make sure that breaches can't happen in the application. But there's business people you need to fight against, and then there's developers who are just more interested in building things that feel good and move quickly. And so the task is kind of convincing them that it doesn't have to be hard to integrate security into your application. You just have to understand what is meant by security, basically.
Yeah, I think that there's an interesting way to approach this, and it's almost like a framework approach from a dev perspective. You're setting up several. I'm not sure how you run your team exactly, but when you're setting up the basic parameters of, hey, we're using these tools, we're using these libraries, that sort of thing, and if you have the XQ built in as sort of a base a base library, and you can even like develop an interface for it. I think that Ike's got one available, so that like anytime that anyone wants to send any information outside of that application, whether it's to a database or a network call or something like that, it just sort of automatically has to hit the security. So you can build it into the framework so that like it's almost like an automated thing that they don't even have to think about, like sort of almost behind the any of the network calls is one way to do it from a framework perspective. And then there are ways also to do this from a DevSecOps thing in terms of just building it into encrypting all of your code when it's at rest versus when it gets like sent to GitHub or whatnot. So I think that for asking people to be active about security, we've found to be difficult. You know, your point, like it's not on their mind. So you have to make it a no-brainer. It's got to be plug and play. So one of the things we're saying here is like, we're trying to make the security aspect of it so easy to integrate that it just becomes that kind of thing where like, hey, this is just sort of a base call in all of our projects in a way. It's built into it. And then it's just part of there are other ways to build security into like your workflow as well. Some of which XQ addresses, some of which are like other sort of, there are other solutions for as well. But I think that making it something that people don't have to think about is almost the only way to do it.
And I would add two things to that. So one thing is that, security in general is really a reactive industry. On average, it takes 283 days to identify a data breach within America. So what we've done is we've really looked at security and said, how can we change it from a reactive industry to a proactive industry? So like Junaid was bringing up with XQ, once you've integrated that, every time data is accessed or there's an attempt of access, no matter where it is in the world, we're able to flag access that doesn't, match the historical places where that data has been accessed from, or whether there's been an attempted access that wasn't successful. So what that does is, on a real-time basis, changes security from being a reactive industry to a proactive industry. Now, when I look at security as a whole, and I think, how do you change the mentality and how do you allow companies to really, and developers to really make sure that security is a value that they keep top of mind? I think it has to be a top-down approach as well. So there's a Fortune 500 company a number of years ago. The board of directors identified that it was really important that their information was not breached. So much so that they made a clause in the CEO's contract that said if there was a data breach of this information, that CEO could be fired with cause. What did that do? This is a massive company within America. What that did was that CEO immediately invested in security and immediately made job performance tied to data security. So, as a whole, I think that our industry has to really look at it from this impacts our financial, our reputational, and our personnel. And that's obviously longer term, Ben.
Great. So I want to thank everybody for joining. Please make sure that Kelby has your email so you get your Amazon gift card.
Yeah, and additionally, it's been really great talking with all of you. And of course, we didn't have enough time to go through everyone's questions. If you guys wouldn't mind directly following up with me, just Kelby, KELBY at xqmessage.com. I'll share it in the messages here. If you have any other questions or you want to set up a meeting with myself, Brian, Junaid, or Mark, who's our head of product, we'd be more than happy to meet with you guys, talk about your specific challenges, and discuss if there's any opportunity for us to work together. Like Junaid said earlier on, we want this to be a continuing event. We really appreciate you guys joining us today. So whatever we can do to help you, we're more than willing to do, because we find, that always comes back tenfold. That's how I live my life, at least. So thank you guys so much. And if you could share with myself or Lauren your emails so that we can get you your Amazon gift card, that would be great. And outside of that, please feel free to follow up directly with me or anyone else on the team. And we'd love to set up a call to kind of walk you through some of the products that we've developed that kind of prove our concept as well, that you might be able to integrate into your website and applications immediately.
Great. Thanks for your time then.
Everyone.